All right, everybody. Welcome in to Load the Box. I'm in my new house. Jack is in his house. Uh, and the draft happened last week. 6 days ago, I think it started. Vikings had an active draft. Did some really only made one trade. I think I don't think they moved around too much in those later rounds, which of course Rick Spielman's known for. But before we get into breaking down all of the picks that were made across those 3 days, I have two questions for you, Jack. Number one, how have you been? Number two, how do you feel about this draft class?
It's been a good week. It's been fairly busy on the work side and trying to get some. I ended up pushing my draft. I'll plug that quick. My draft recap is up on kfan.com right now. I graded every single pick and then gave the overall grade to this draft as well. And I am feeling very good about this draft. I know we were talking a little bit before we hopped on the show and went live tonight that we're both pretty big fans of how this draft turned out. And like you said, Rick Spielman didn't have to do a lot of wheeling and dealing. I think that stemmed from the trade he made in the first round, sliding back 9 spots with the Jets and getting those two third-round picks. It allowed him to really after the second day I wrote an article just saying the Vikings did a fantastic job at finding a mix between value and need throughout this entire draft class. And it seems like they did that. I mean, the wide receiver out of Iowa they got in the 5th round, he's a guy that I don't think should have been there in the 5th round. There's a guy, or Wyatt Davis, in the 3rd round. Neither of us expected Wyatt Davis to fall to the 3rd round. So it just seemed like the pieces of the puzzle fell into place without Rick Spielman really having to move around too much. And overall, it was a fantastic draft class. I'm really looking forward to it. We get a preseason this year, even though it's just 3 games. Didn't have that last year. I'm excited to see a lot of these guys get some reps. You go out and your second pick of the draft is potentially a quarterback of the future. You're not going to see him until the future, obviously, but probably going to see some reps, obviously, in preseason. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be an extremely entertaining 2021 season for Vikings fans.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun. I think it's going to be a fun year for us Vikings fans. But let's go ahead. Let's go pick by pick. If you haven't obsessed over this draft class like I'm sure me and Jack have, we'll try and fill you in on what we like about some of these guys, where they need to improve. Kind of some of them. Wyatt Davis and Jalen Twyman. I'm gonna make a big stink about how happy I am that we landed these guys. And I'm sure Jack, probably pop champagne when we actually did take Kellen Mond. So we're going to start with the first pick of the draft, which I'm currently on Sports Illustrated, and they have it incorrect. It says we picked him at pick number 14. We did not. We traded down with the New York Jets because Justin Fields wasn't there at 14, which Repelt said we were going to take him, but that's speculation, and we'll talk about that probably next week. We trade down to pick 23. Christian Darrisaw falls all the way down. My initial reaction to this pick, and this is not a joke, it was, wait, he's still there? I got very upset, or angry, I guess, when Leatherwood went to Las Vegas, because I was like, well, I figured we were going to take, one of those late first round, early second round tackles, and I figured we would have to end up getting Eichenberg out of Notre Dame or something. And then we took Deoso, and I was like, holy cow, I didn't even realize he was still on the board. Incredibly good player. I don't think he allowed a sack last year, just a couple of pressures. He immediately comes in. There's gonna be a competition in air quotes. He's gonna be the left tackle starting week 1, God willing. I'm really excited about him. He's mean. He's strong, and he's good in space. Jack, what do you like about Darrisaw at 23?
Yeah, he's got the good left tackle size. He's 6'5", 320-ish pounds, but he doesn't move like a big man. He's got some mobility, and he really fits in this outside zone scheme. A couple nuggets that I found after he was taken. PFF has him. It was either the only tackle in this draft class or the only tackle in 2020 last year with an overall run blocking grade and pass blocking grade above 90, which if you're familiar with PFF and you go back and you look at the grades for the Vikings offensive line last year, the Vikings haven't had an offensive lineman. Don't quote me on this, but I don't know the last time the Vikings had an offensive lineman even close to an overall grade of 90 for pass blocking, especially. Maybe they've gotten close to that in the run game because I know we've had some players that are a little bit stronger in the run game, but we got a player that fills a day one need, obviously, and he's a day one starter at left tackle, like you said, fits the system. I'm excited. It's not always easy to get excited over offensive linemen, in my opinion. But when you know that this team desperately needed help along this offensive line, they were able to get a guy that I would have been comfortable taking at 14. They were able to trade back, get 2 additional third-round picks, and still get a perfect fit for their scheme, a potential franchise like 10-year, 15-year player at left tackle, and I'm all about it. I'm jacked up about this pick, and I'm jacked up about the following picks that came because of the trade back.
Yeah, I think it really ended up being a great trade back. If you look at what we got for pick number 14 versus what the Jets got for moving up, they got Elijah Vera Tucker, who is probably going to be a very solid guard in this league. I'm not knocking Elijah Vera Tucker at all, but I think we got somebody who's going to be a very good left tackle, and I think we also came back with that other pick that we got from them in the third round. I believe it was Mond and Davis, if I am correct. So we come back and, we use 2 of the 3 picks they gave us to really show up this offensive line, and I think keep Cousins clean for the next 2 years until he is inevitably replaced by the following man. Pick number 66, we took quarterback Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M. Had a lot of hype around him early, like week 2 and 3 of the NCAA season. He had a really good year, won a bowl game. I believe they went 9-1 this season, but don't hold me to that. I'm not a big college guy. He's got a big arm. He ran like a 4.5 40-yard dash. The guy's athletic as all get out. He has a cannon. I really like the pick. For everything that I've watched on him, his accuracy really isn't that bad, and I didn't expect him to be there at pick 66, especially considering I expected Jalen Hurts to be in the third round last year. He went in the second. I expected Kellen Mond to go, in the same kind of range where Jalen Hurts went right there in that second round. So Kellen Mond falling all the way down to us. I like the pick. Cousins probably doesn't. RG3 says Cousins really doesn't. But Jack, what do you think of Kellen Mond? Tell the people why they should be excited.
I am excited about this. This is a good plug for both of us too. I did tweet out a video of a couple throws that he made. It was against Texas, like Texas State or a smaller school, but that doesn't matter. He made it might have been back to back, or it was either back to back throws or it was the same series. It was within a minute of each other. And the first one was an incompletion and the second one was a completion, but both throws were absolutely insane. You can go check that out on our Twitter at LTB Vikings. I'm pumped about this. Obviously, we talked leading up to the draft that the Vikings needed to find some sort of quarterback to develop and learn behind Kirk Cousins. I think the fan base started to get a little bit excited when Justin Fields fell within reach for this team. And there was the rumors coming out as well saying it wasn't just the fan base. Hey, there's people within this front office that were excited about Justin Fields being there as well. And then Chicago, NFC North opponent, the Vikings are going to be familiar with Justin Fields still twice every year if he ends up winning that starting job, which as of right now, not a huge knock on Andy Dalton, but I just don't think that the leash is going to be very, very, very short if Andy Dalton is the starter, given you went up and you traded for your quarterback of the future in Justin Fields. But I think personally, yes, I've gone on this show several times saying I wanted Justin Fields in Minnesota. I think the trade may have worked out better for the Vikings with the Kellen Mond pick. I'm not saying Kellen Mond is going to be a better prospect than Justin Fields because I don't think that's going to be the case. He's more of a project than Justin Fields is. They both, although they both do need some fine tuning on their mechanics, but just watch his film and you will find reasons to be excited. He needs to work on the accuracy a little bit at times, but he's a bigger guy. He's got a smaller frame, but he's 6'3". He can make some big time throws and you will see that on film if you turn on the film. A couple other I have a couple other notes here on him. The Vikings finally invested at the quarterback position. It's been years of the fan base calling for the Vikings to use even an average pick on the quarterback position, not a 7th rounder on Nate Stanley, not going after a guy like Jake Browning out of Washington as an undrafted free agent. This was their 2nd pick in the draft, and they weren't afraid to go. I wasn't sure if they were going to pull the trigger right there. Glad they did, because I believe Mills went the pick after him. So that run on quarterbacks, it happened right there. And then Kyle Trask went a couple picks before to Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken. But a reoccurring theme throughout this Vikings draft class is a lot of these players that they picked up really had standout days at the Senior Bowl, and Kellen Mond was no different. He was an MVP of the Senior Bowl. He had a pretty solid pro day. Will Ragetz tweeted out a video. I know the video was all over Twitter, but just reminding Vikings of the throws that he was making at his pro day. They were pretty special throws as well. Like I said, if you turn on the tape, you're going to see throws like that. The one that I posted on our Twitter page is a very similar, where he rolls out to the left, makes something out of nothing, and absolutely drops a dime. You have to see it for yourself. I can't do the video justice. So there are some knocks to him. He does need to loosen up a little bit. He's pretty tight with his mechanics, but I think there's areas of his game that aren't necessarily strong suits that I think if Kirk Cousins is kind of willing to be the mentor that I'm hoping he can be, I think it can help Kellen Mond reach his potential, and hopefully maybe someday turn into a type of player like a Dak Prescott, who also went in the middle rounds, wasn't expected to do a whole lot, and had some knocks on his mechanics, but has some good overall athleticism. I would not be shocked if we're sitting here 3-4 years down the road if people are talking about Kellen Mond as a similar turnout to someone like a Dak Prescott. Yes, those are huge shoes to fill. I don't think we're going to see that necessarily right away, but if you go and watch this kid play, there's some special skill sets there, and I'm very excited about this pick. The reason I'm the most excited is because we've been talking about this, how we want the Vikings to go after a guy and not force him onto the field. He's not going to play this year, barring some crazy injury, and I don't think he's going to play the following year. I think this is at least a 2-year succession plan to Kirk Cousins, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, what I really like about the pick, he's just, I love the mobility. I really do. And because he ran a 4.5 and you watch his highlights on YouTube, and, there's a few rushing touchdowns, people think like, what is this? Another Lamar Jackson guy? Is this another? He's not. He's an accurate thrower of the football. He just happens to have elusive ability. I really like what I see out of him. I think he's a great fit for this offense. And he is now, I think, most Vikings fans' favorite player. Not Billy Biskupski in the chat saying Mond is going to be a bust. Can you really be a bust if you were taken in the 3rd round? And then he says he doesn't.
Fair to call developmental quarterbacks taken in the 3rd round a bust necessarily, but
he says he doesn't even want to be in Minnesota. And he said I'd ask you not to hate on Nate Stanley. I do have to point out, I was listening to Rick Spielman in some of his press conferences after the draft this morning, and he's talking about like, oh, we're excited for this QB competition between Kellen Mond and Nate Stanley. And I was like, I have a strong inkling on who's going to win that backup job. But I think all Vikings fans, regardless of if it's Browning, Stanley, Mond, thank God Mannion's not going to be the backup this year. If, knock on wood, I won't even say, if Cousins decides he wants to go and retire and challenge Aaron Rodgers for the Jeopardy job, we have somebody who I feel confident can actually maybe have something in them, rather than Sean Mannion, who is balding and he's only like 27 years old. I'm being mean to Sean Mannion, and I don't even know the guy. But anyway, moving on. Let's see. 12 picks later, we take the linebacker Chaz Surratt out of North Carolina. Really rangy type of guy. Jack, I'll let you go in because I don't know a ton about him. Everything that I hear about him, though, he's the Vikings' next quarterback. We went back-to-back because he did play QB for, I think, 2 years, and then he transitioned and played linebacker for the rest of his college career and is now going to be playing it in the NFL. What do you think of this pick, Jack? Break it down for me.
Yeah, it was actually Mel Kiper was going over the Vikings draft, and it was actually one of his favorite players for the Vikings in this draft class. And I think a lot of Vikings fans scratching their heads a little bit when they used this early of a pick. They wanted offensive line still. I think you could have seen them going with a pass rusher here as well. It was a weird pick at the time, but the more I look into it, the more I like it. He was a 20 in 2019, which I believe was his first full season of playing linebacker. He was the runner-up for ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and he was first team all ACC runner-up. Yeah, that's what I just said. I thought I had something else here, but a lot of people are saying he's the replacement to that Will spot with Eric Wilson leaving. Obviously, you go out and get you get Nick Vigil. You have Troy Dye coming in the year 2 as well. But Mel Kiper seems to think that he's the front runner for that job, which I thought was a little bit surprising. You mentioned he was a quarterback. He was a former quarterback, but he still plays with the nose for the ball. It looks like the guy's been playing defense for years. Yes, there's some pursuit, there's some angle issues, there's stuff that he still needs to tidy up that hey, I trust Mike Zimmer and Adam Zimmer, who works with the linebackers. I trust them tidying up those things and fixing some of those areas of concern. But he's another athletic. I don't want to say project because I think he can honestly make a difference from day one as well. I'm starting to like this pick a lot more than I thought I liked the pick right when it happened. Looking through my notes here a little bit more, just have athletic, physical, and good nose for the football. Those are the three biggest important things when you're looking at the linebacking skill set. You have to have a nose for the ball. In today's NFL, you're starting to see linebackers that can go sideline to sideline and they can downright fly. I think this is a guy that can do that, and I think he fits into what Mike Zimmer wants to do with this defense. And like I said, I wouldn't be overly shocked if he not only he's going to make an impact on special teams, but there's a chance that he takes over that Will spot from day one.
Yeah, I think Adam Zimmer was quoted, or Rick Spielman quoted Adam Zimmer saying that they wanted to get a linebacker that was the linebacker of today's NFL, which is, basically a bigger defensive back that can, be a little bit more effective in the run game. But they really wanted to get somebody that was going to be rangy and athletic, could play with that nose for the football. And I think they got a really, really good pick with Chaz Surratt out of North Carolina. It's not as flashy as a quarterback or the left tackle of the future, right? But I like you said, I think he could come in and he could play in our base package. I don't think he's taking Anthony Barr's job, but Anthony Barr restructured his contract. He's probably gone after this year. So we could see Chaz Surratt and Eric Kendricks be the 1-2 punch in that nickel defense, that famous double A gap look or what have you. I'm going to move off of him. We're going to go to my favorite pick of this draft. How this man was available at pick 86, round 3, pick 86. Wyatt Davis, the guard out of Ohio State. This man should have went early second round. It's just that simple to me. I know he had some injuries that he was dealing with, but you look at his tape and his just the hype behind him in 2019 and even bits of last year. Wyatt Davis had no business being on the being available with the 86th pick. The Vikings get an absolute steal. And to be able to come out of this draft with Christian Darrisaw and Wyatt Davis, I do think they'll switch Wyatt Davis to right guard and they'll put Ezra back on the left side. My God, this offensive line is cooking with gas. It's going to be a good year for Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook if everything pans out the way that we hope it does. We'll see about his health I think he tore his ACL in the championship game. If I'm not mistaken. Oh, it was late in the season. He held his knee. So we'll see about that. And, we'll get some more developments as we get closer. But Wyatt Davis, hopefully going to come in, stout game 1. I really love what we did with the offensive line with just 2 picks, Darrisaw and Davis. Absolutely love it. Jack, what do you like about Wyatt Davis other than the fact that he's just a mean man?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And the word mean, I actually I have the word nasty written down here in my notes, but I'm excited for it. I think there's some room for improvement for him at getting to the second level, which obviously the Vikings use their guards quite frequently in the outside zone scheme. They're pulling and they're getting upfield quickly. And I think he can work on that area of his game a little bit, but I think he's athletic enough to get there, just needs some fine tuning. But like you said, every single thing you read on this guy, it says he's a mauler. He destroys people. He will finish you. And there are several scenarios if you turn on the film of this guy, like not just getting his hands on a guy, but absolutely grabbing a guy and putting him into the dirt. And the Vikings don't have that because they've been drafting for more so of a fit rather than finding a guy like this. I think there were some hopes that a guy like Drew Samia had that nastiness to him, but Drew Samia was never half the guard that we think Wyatt Davis was. There was a lot of people mocking Wyatt Davis in the first round before the injury happened as well. The kid can play football, and like you said, it really shored up this offensive line, which has been a pain in the ass for Vikings fans for the last forever. How long? And you want to go back to the Steve Hutchinson days and the Favre days. It's been a long time since this Vikings fan base has been able to hang their hat on an offensive line unit that has been average at best. And I think with these two rookie additions, it's going to turn into at least an average offensive line in year one. And on top of it, you now have 5 people that the Vikings drafted themselves and are all under the age of 25, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's accurate. But you have a young unit that they put together, they built from the ground up, and I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, he really is Wyatt Davis. That is, he's going to be a stud in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. I said the same thing about Drew Samia, but like you alluded to, Wyatt Davis is his technical ability, like he's just better on tape than what Drew Samia was. Drew Samia went in a similar spot, and that's what's so shocking to me is Wyatt Davis is so head and shoulders above Drew Samia at the college level. So how we got him at pick 86 is beyond me. But now we get into the next Danielle Hunter. There's another next Danielle Hunter later in the draft. But before we get into that, I do want to take a second. Tom Day in the chat saying, who will get the first Tom Day offensive lineman award? If I was a betting man, I would say Brian O'Neill. But out of those two, I'm going to go with Wyatt Davis because I think he might jump off the tape a little more. He might, just absolutely punish some undersized defensive tackle in a game. And me and Jack will talk about it on the show, and we'll freak out and be like, "Oh, that's the Tom Day offensive lineman." Whereas Deosaw, hopefully we just forget about the man after this show. Hopefully we don't have to talk about him ever again. He just doesn't give up any sacks, and if he has a run like Brian O'Neill, where he goes a year and a half of starting games without giving up a sack, the Vikings will win the Super Bowl this year. But anyway, moving on to the next Danielle Hunter, defensive end Patrick Jones II out of Pitt. Jack, I'm going to let you break this down because there's really one thing about him that stands out to me, and I'm sure you'll go over it, and then I'll just really stress it after you. So go ahead and tell me about Patrick Jones II.
Yeah, he's a true 4-3 defensive end. So obviously that's what the Vikings utilize on their defense. They're not going to have him out in coverage, and he's never done that. So it's not really much of an issue because the Vikings aren't going to make him do that. But I'm hearing from Egan that this is a guy that Andre Patterson was standing on the table for. Andre Patterson really likes this kid. He had 17 and a half sacks in his last 22 games, I believe. I have it written down here. I don't know why I didn't look at that. Has a good set of pass rushing maneuvers as well. He was a consensus All-American in 2020 after finishing with 9 sacks in his 2020 season. I'm not ready to say he's going to be the starting defensive end opposite of Danielle Hunter. I think there's going to be a fun competition there. There's going to be a fun rotation there for sure. I don't think any one of the 4 are going to necessarily be the go-to starter because I think they're going to have a nice set rotation going into the season. But you have DJ Wanham coming into season 2. You have Stephen Weatherly making his return to Minnesota as well. And then we'll talk about another guy here in a few minutes. But I think Patrick Jones is going to be involved in that rotation. And my favorite thing that I've read about him, and you can see it on tape as well, is the guy is an absolute workhorse. He plays with a lot of effort, which I think the defensive coaches on this team absolutely love that. You need to have a good pursuit for the football no matter where you're at. He's going to make a difference in the run game and in the pass rushing game as well. So it wasn't the sexiest pick because I don't think he's necessarily the greatest athlete, but the effort levels are there. The numbers are there. He showed at Pittsburgh that he can get after the quarterback as well. So I think there's enough reason to be excited about this pick. I know it's the back end of the third round, but if Andre Patterson is excited about a guy, then I'm excited about that guy because Andre Patterson works wonders on defensive linemen. He's been doing it. He has a proven track record of doing it over the last several seasons, and I'm excited to see how a couple of them turn out from this draft class.
Yeah, and I believe Patrick Jones, he's the one with the 7-foot wingspan, correct?
No, that's the next one.
Okay, that is okay.
believe.
All right, my bad. We
Unless
took two
I'm
of them.
mistaken, unless they both are just built like that. I think the next
One
one
of
is
them's
one that I
got
made a
Kevin
note.
Durant arms, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But the next guy up is running back. Jack, I'll let you pronounce his name because I'm gonna.
I don't know if it's Kane or Keen, and then it's in Nwangu is how you say it, I believe. And
One more time.
another player
for the
that
kids in the
this
back.
Nwangu is how you say it, I believe.
Okay. All right. I'm with you.
Nwangu. But they just took a chance on. I think you and I mean, when we were going through our mock drafts, you saw us take guys like Chuba Hubbard, just because Mike Boone did go out to Denver. Obviously, you still have 3 starters probably, unless they do decide to make a decision and cut Amir Abdullah outside of training camp. But you have Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison are 1A and 1B on the depth chart. So I think he's gonna make the roster because there's some videos out there of him just returning kicks, and this guy is a freak of an athlete. He holds the Iowa State record for kick return yards with 2,470 return yards. That's not receiving or rushing yards. That's strictly kick returning yards. That's exciting. Like I said, it seemed a little bit early for my liking. I think you could have went somewhere else here as well, but they saw him as a sleeper type guy that they wanted to get on this roster, and they really, I mean, it was clear with a couple picks in this draft, they wanted to find some guys that they could throw back there and return kicks, return punts, because that was, I mean, special teams is an issue on all phases of the football last year, with whether that was place kicking or returning or coverage on kickoff. This special teams unit was a mess overall, and I think they shored up that position, at least the returning position, with 2 players in this draft. And I think Nwangu is probably the favorite as of right now to be the kick returner on day 1.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I think he comes in. Spielman likes guys that can kind of Swiss Army knife a little bit. Specifically, he likes his kick returnos to be able to catch some passes if what hits the fan. In this case, his kick returner can also be a backup running back. He actually was a solid running back at Iowa State. He was always just kind of riding the bench behind somebody else, so he never really got that opportunity to stout. Unfortunately for the kid, he's not going to get that opportunity in Minnesota, God willing, because we do have Alexander Madison in front of him, and then in front of all of them by a mile is Dalvin Cook. So I think he comes in. I think he's a good kick returner. Hopefully, I got excited about the kid out of Miami last year, and I don't even know if he's still on the team. So, Nwangu, I think, correct? Did I do it?
I believe so.
All
Yes,
right.
I think you're saying it. But I will. Are you done on him? Or are you moving on? Or are you going to say one more thing?
Well, my last thoughts on him is just, good kick returner, and, we'll kind of see what happens in the run game. But like you said, I do think he makes the roster strictly just to take kicks back, and fingers crossed he can also do that with punts.
Yeah, and I think he brings a interesting play style to the offense as well. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out with Amir Abdullah. I feel like every year over the last couple of years that he's been here, he's been a prime candidate to get released at the end or throughout training camp when the 53-man comes out, and he still makes it. I think he's been the return guy, and then he can still be that change of pace back on third down. If I'm the Minnesota Vikings, I'm going to take a younger kid with higher athletic profile and see what this kid can do as that change of pace back on third down. Not only is he more of an explosive return man than what Ameer Abdullah is, I think you put that explosiveness in this offense and you just have a strict package for this kid where it's like, hey, you are going to go out here and you are going to catch a screen pass and you are going to run as fast as you possibly can. I think that if he makes the roster as a return man, I think there's a good chance we see him on the field as like a third down scat back type player. And I like that because Ameer Abdullah, he's been fine in that aspect, but now we're getting an elite athlete that could come in and really turn on the burners and hopefully be entertaining for the Vikings offense on a few select plays this year as well.
Absolutely. So, in the interest of time, let's speed things up a little bit. I don't want to skip over anybody by any means because I do think the Vikings. I think every pick we made, we knocked it out of the ballpark. But moving on to safety, not defensive back, safety. Cam Bynum out of the University of Cal, not the fastest guy. Me and Jack were actually just talking about this before the show. Not the fastest guy. But going to be transitioning to that safety role. Jack, you told me a story before the show about an interview that you had seen from him, and I think that is a very good story to tell about Cam Bynum. I really liked what he said during his draft call. This is the story that I'll tell. During his draft call, he said something along the lines of, I'm going to be the best to ever do it. Like, we're going to have the best defense in the league. Like, so I think he's a confident young man. I like that. Hopefully he can come in. I don't know if he will immediately see the field, but developmental safety, a guy like Anthony Harris who, transitions from being a defensive back to playing that safety role. What do you think of Cam Bynum? And then also tell that story that you told me.
Yeah, I'm a fan of this pick as well. I don't think there's many picks. I mean, a safety pick was coming. I think the Vikings had some corners on their radar. Another one that I was hearing sounded like they did have a little bit of interest in Shaun Wade as a safety as well, not as a cornerback. So that was intriguing to me. 4-year starter at the University of Cal, and I'll say two things. He's smart and he has a nose for the football. Like you said, he's not the fastest guy, but he's smart and he has a nose for the football. If you're starting to notice a reoccurring theme when we talk about defensive players, I think that's because there is a reoccurring theme for a quote unquote Mike Zimmer defense. And I think he fits this Mike Zimmer style of play. And here's the quote. There's two things post draft after the Vikings read his card or his name came across the screen. One, go find the video on Twitter if you haven't seen it already, where he comes running down a staircase. I think he was the player that rented like some cabin with friends and family for this day, and he comes running down the stairs shirtless with a massive speaker, hands the speaker off, rips a Vikings flag off of the deck of the cabin he's at, sprints forward and does a backflip into a freezing cold lake. And I mean, if you want a guy to fit in Minnesota, you do something like that. That guy fits in Minnesota already. But I'll read the tweet. This is from Chad Graff of The Athletic. I'm assuming this was just after their post conference after he was drafted. It says Vikings 4th round pick Cam Bynum confirmed he'll move to safety with Minnesota and said he plans on shadowing Harrison Smith. He'll probably, and then start quote, he'll probably get annoyed and bothered, but I'm going to be in his ear asking all sorts of questions. Bynum said, that excites me. Get this kid underneath the wing of Harrison Smith and let's see if you can turn him into, I mean, the Vikings have a track record of turning players, safeties, into pretty damn good football players. And if you put them under the wing of a guy like Harrison Smith, I think it's going to work wonders for the kid. So I'm excited about the pick and probably not going to make a huge impact on day one on the defense, but immediate special teams contributor.
Absolutely. He's another one of those guys that kind of gives you that dual threat. He can play safety, and if stuff hits the fan, he's got experience playing defensive back or cornerback, whatever your phrasing preference is. Moving on to pick 134, we took defensive end Janarius Robinson out of Florida State University. Another guy who is kind of developmental to come in, like you mentioned earlier with the Patrick Jones selection. It's going to be an interesting rotation of young developmental guys, and hopefully one of them is able. I think those 3 or 4 of them right now that are going to be cycling in that spot. Not to mention Stephen Weatherly, also going to be competing for that spot. So hopefully one of these guys really takes that step to be, and shows that potential to be the 1A to Daniil, or the 1B to Daniil Hunter's 1A, similar to the Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter pairings that we've had. And we can go through all of the duos that we've had over the years. But right now we kind of have Daniil Hunter and a big question mark at that other side. So he's just another toss of the doubt at the doubt board to see if we can hit that bullseye. What do you like about Janarius Robinson?
So this is one of my top three favorite picks in this entire draft class. I know it's no, excuse me. Wow, I have weird. One of my favorite picks in this draft class. He is the one who has the insane wingspan. His athletic measurements are absolutely insane. His wingspan, I believe it's in the 96th percentile. This guy is built like the guy who Vikings fans want the Vikings to draft in the middle rounds, because they've done it with Daniil Hunter. They did it with Everson Griffin. Brian Robinson is another name you can throw in there. They found so many of these guys in the third and fourth rounds over the years, and they throw two darts. I think that was something that you and I talked about in at least one of the mock shows, that I wanted them to take at least, if they're not using an early day one or day two pick, which they use at the back end to get Patrick Jones. But if they're not using a pick in that area, I want at least two darts thrown at this position. They did it with another intriguing, freakishly athletic, and just built different type player. Wasn't overly productive in college, but his traits, again, I've said this already, his traits being paired up with Andre Patterson are exciting. Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl, put out a tweet saying he has some of the freakiest tools, not in this entire draft class, not in fourth round, not in third round, not in the first round, in the entire draft class. Janarius Robinson has some of the freakiest tool sets to work with. You put those tools in Andre Patterson's toolbox, and I expect big things from this kid. It's probably a lot to expect out of a fourth round rookie, but he's my favorite edge taken in this draft class. I like him a little bit more than I like Patrick Jones, just because the athletic upside is there, and I'm excited to see how he plays into that rotation.
Absolutely. Like you said, he's got the big. Oh, well, I said it earlier, but we confirmed it. It is Janarius Robinson who has the Kevin Durant wingspan. So hopefully, this is such an underrated aspect of football, and I won't go on too big of a tangent, but every time there's a play that goes on for more than 2 to 3 seconds, my whole family is screaming "Get your hands up!" And having a 7-foot wingspan, that's a lot of hands, a lot of arm going up into the air to potentially knock some balls down.
I will say too, he's good. He's good in the run game too. That's what you want out of a defensive end in a 4-3 set. That's what you want out of any pass rusher. Anyways, you want them to be a willing participant in the run game. He's more than that. He's good in the run game, and he can get after the passer.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Going into round 5, pick 157, we took Iowa wide receiver Ihmir Smith-Marsette. From what I understand, this kid has down the field potential. In spades. I've seen a lot of people speculating that this kid's going to be the wide receiver 3, and most of what he does is going to be what Stefon Diggs did, a couple of years ago, where it was just hey, you're there to make sure that the safeties have to play back, and that's what we're going to use you for. I could see Cousins, because Cousins throws a really good deep ball. I could see Cousins going to him, especially if we're running all over somebody and they decide to bring those safeties down to load the box, pun intended. I like the pick. I think it's good value for the 157th pick, the first pick of day 3. I'm sorry. Is round 4 on day 3?
Yes, round 4 is
okay,
the first
my bad.
round of day 3.
For the first pick, for the first Vikings pick of round 5, I like Ihmir Smith-Marsette. He doesn't have the body type, but it reminds me of that really short guy that we had a couple years ago that we had out of Washington. Do you remember who I'm talking about? He caught 3 touchdown passes in one game or something. Oh, it wasn't. It was 2, but
I can't think of the name.
I can't think of his name. He played with Cousins in Washington, and then we signed him before we played the Rams.
It's gonna bother me.
Well, we have Dino now. Whatever his name was, he reminds me of him in the sense that it's
Was
like,
it Aldrick Robinson? Is that who it
yes,
was? I don't know if
yes.
I'm 100% sure, but I was like spacing. I was like, I don't know if that's accurate, but I want to look this up and make sure I'm not naming
Yes,
some
that
like
was
defensive end or something. But
yeah. He came in though, and we would just throw him in the game and be like, go deep, and he would just run as fast as he could down the field. And Cousins likes to take his chances. So I like Smith Marset. What do you think of this kid? What can he bring to the table?
yeah, you mentioned Stephon Diggs, and they were both drafted by the Minnesota Vikings in the 5th round. Obviously, they threw a dart at KJ Osborne last year. Doesn't feel like that's going to really work out because I think his sole purpose was also to fix the return game. He did not do that. They threw 2 darts at 2 potential playmakers. Smith Marset is another one that I think that will be in that competition for the return game. But you said it best as well. This is extreme value. This guy should not have been there in the 5th round, and I'm not going to be shocked if he wins the wide receiver 3 spot. Maybe not from day one right out of camp, because it's weird how the Vikings handle things. You saw, Justin Jefferson was the best rookie wide receiver in his class by far last year, and he didn't see like the snaps he probably deserved until that 3rd week of the season. So I don't know if they're going to necessarily throw in a 5th round wide receiver right away, but I wouldn't be surprised if he eased his way into that wide receiver 3 spot. Louis Riddick sent out a tweet after this pick, and he said he was underutilized but open frequently, which is something that you want to hear. Obviously, Iowa isn't known for producing quarterbacks. No knock on Nate Stanley, obviously, but I was not known for producing elite level talented quarterbacks. He was underthrown frequently, and like you said, the speed shows on tape. He's an absolute playmaker. He's a decently good route runner as well. One thing I will say, he's got to stop flipping into the end zone when he celebrates. He ended up getting hurt doing that, actually, and that's not something that I would not want to be a part of the conversation of watching him get hurt on the Viking sideline and then having to listen to Mike Zimmer after that happens. Don't get any stupid injuries where you're flipping and rolling your ankle or anything like that. But other than that, the kid can flat out play. Don't think he should have been there in the 5th round. And I'm excited because I think he's going to make a difference from day one on this very, very shallow wide receiving corps outside of Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. I will say this next pick does help with the shallow wide receiving core. I'm not saying this kid's coming in to be Kyle Rudolph 2.0 or anything, because he's a 5th round pick. We'll get it. We've already gotten into the territory where it's like, honestly, after Darisaw, we didn't pick again until the 3rd round. So it's not like we picked it at 33. So it was like a late 1st, early 2nd. Like, all of these guys are like, fingers crossed they work out. If they don't, okay, it was it was a 3rd round pick, or it was a 5th round pick, whatever. But it's funny that I didn't know that story about Smith Marset, and every time I see somebody celebrating, I always think like somebody has had to have like injured themselves doing that. And of course, the Vikings take the guy that has. Moving on to pick 168, tight end Zach Davidson out of Central Missouri, the Mules, I believe. And now I'm saying it as a joke, but Rick Spielman legitimately does like players that can do 2 things, and he was the Mules punter for 2 seasons, and then they decided, you're 6'7", and they watched him jogging, and they were like, you are pretty quick too, let's throw you at tight end. And sure enough, they went ahead and slapped him there. He garnered a ton of NFL attention and ends up coming here. He's 6'7", and I believe, don't quote me on this, he ran in the 4.7 range.
4.62. I have it written
That's
down.
what it was, yeah. So, 4.62, that's pretty good speed for somebody that's 6'7". Just throw this kid in the red zone and just start tossing up jump balls. He's 6'7". That is just ridiculous. That's what stands out to me about him, is just his pure height and the ability to move fast. It's not like he's, he's not Andre the Giant, just, waddling around the field. He does have some athleticism to him. And we also have an emergency punter now. So Jack, what do you like about Davidson? And then we get to talk about my favorite pick of the draft, or my second.
Yeah, I think you said it best. Just size and speed are the two things there. He is a Division II prospect, but I think there's gonna be an open competition for that tight end 3 spot with between him and Brandon Dillon. They also brought in. We don't need to go into this too much. We'll probably talk about this again down the road, but the Vikings have announced some of their undrafted free agents, and Shane Zylstra, familiar name to the Minnesota Vikings, former Minnesota State Mankato wide receiver that the Vikings just signed, undrafted. If that doesn't ring a bell, I apologize for you, but they're switching him over to tight end as well. Also, Brandon Zylstra, his brother, played for the Vikings for a couple seasons as well, but there is going to be a fun and intriguing tight end 3 battle. I know I don't know if that's the most intriguing thing to keep an eye on throughout training camp, but you have Zylstra now, you have a 6'7" athlete, and then you have Brandon Dillon, who I think the team is fairly high on as well. They had on the practice squad at one point last year.
So here's the question: would we rather have Zach Davidson, the 6'7", never played a snap of NFL football in his life, as our tight end 3, or would we rather have Tim Tebow as our tight end 3? Because apparently he's coming back.
If it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers stealing the show this last weekend, that was kind of the headline leading into the draft.
Skip and Shannon talked about it, and Shannon Sharp was he was upset about it. But we'll have to talk more about that off the air because we're starting to go a little bit over time. Do you have anything else on Zach Davidson?
No, that ties it up. I think like I said, it'll be an interesting camp battle, but we'll get to that this summer.
Absolutely.
When we start talking about camp battles.
Moving on to the final pick, the Tom Brady Memorial pick, even though he's still alive and winning Super Bowls. Round 6, pick 199. The Vikings picked, honestly, maybe the defensive equivalent of Tom Brady. I was blown away that Wyatt Davis was available at 86, but I kind of got it. He was injured, didn't really know what was going on. Jalen Twyman is a stud. The man basically picked up a school and bench pressed it 6 times at his pro day. He jumped. This is a fun NFL Network tidbit. He jumps taller than Ian Rapoport. He clears him whenever he jumps. He is a physical freak, a smaller pass rushing defensive tackle. Holy cow, we got him 1 pick before 200. I'm excited about this. I'm buying a Jalen Twyman jersey once we get to the point in the season where like the numbers are official, because I have a buddy who bought a Nick Chubb jersey and then he changed his number because he got like an illegal one. But Jalen Twyman idolizes Aaron Donald. He can tell you the brand name of his suit from when he got drafted. He idolizes Aaron Donald, tries to play like him, wore the same number as him in college. I'm not going to say he's Aaron Donald. He went 199, and he's a little rough around the edges. I still love the pick because of his, just raw passion for the game, and that really showed in his draft call. That's the biggest thing about it. The Spielman called him, and just immediately he was sobbing, and he's like, "Do you want to be a Minnesota Viking?" And he was, just bawling his eyes out. It seems like a great kid. I'm really excited for him. And he's a guy that we were drafted in like the 3rd or 4th round. And we got him in the 6th at 199, Jack. Just the value on every one of these picks to me blows me out of the water. It just absolutely blows me out of the water. I think we hit it out of the park with this class. Jack, what do you think of Twyman? What stands out to you? How much do you like the pick? And then we can kind of start closing up.
I think one of the reasons he did fall this far, it sounds like the athletic measurements didn't go as well for him on his pro day, but I also, with him opting out, it sounds like he was up in weight, and I don't know if I was dreaming about this or if I actually saw a video somewhere, but I could have sworn there's something that got released of Rick Spielman saying there's a certain weight that they wanted to see him get down to, and he ended up getting to that weight. He sent them the picture. So the kid wants to work, and he said one of his tweets leading into day 3, I'm not going to go find it, so don't quote me on this, but it was along the lines of, just put me with a coach that wants it as bad as I do. Well, you got that with Andre Patterson, and Andre Patterson is going to try to work wonders on you. And if it's a kid that's willing to learn and he's going to grind, like you said, he was the Aaron Donald factor is there just because they went to the same school, and it wasn't just because they went to Pittsburgh. This guy in 2019 was the first interior defensive lineman to lead Pittsburgh with 10.5 sacks. He led his entire team on a team that I mean, they had Patrick Jones II on that team as well, and he had more sacks from the interior. He was the first player to do that for Pitt since Aaron Donald. So he's a very low risk, high reward pick in my position, because if you can fine tune some things, I don't think he's necessarily has the size to be a 3-down guy in this defense, because I don't know if he's necessarily the greatest in run support just because he is a little bit smaller for the interior of the D line. But 10.5 sacks in a collegiate season from the interior, it speaks for itself. He has a nose for getting after the quarterback. He has a little bit of a pass. I think he can work, from what I'm trying to remember. I didn't write this down, but I think he could work on his pass rushing maneuvers a little bit more, add a little bit more to his repertoire. But overall, it was a pick, like you said, 199, extreme value, low risk, high reward. And I think Vikings fans, this is going to be another name to keep an eye on throughout training camp, with potentially, I'll just kind of start to wrap it up now as well, and just kind of, we can go into that direction. Like you said, there was just value found on every day of the draft for this team. And I truly believe this, and it could just be the Minnesotan speaking inside of me, the optimistic version of myself coming back, because the season's over, the draft's through, and now we're looking ahead to training camp into the season. I legitimately think we could be looking at this Vikings draft class 3, 4, 5 years down the road and say, holy hell, that class was just as good, if not better, than the 2015 draft class with Stephon Diggs, with Danielle Hunter, with Eric Kendricks. Studs came out of that draft class. They had 11 darts to throw, and I think they found value on almost all 11 picks, and I'm very excited about the future of this franchise.
Yeah, to touch back on Twyman for just 1 second, because I love that pick so much, and we are wrapping up here. I'll really quickly before I talk about Twyman, Jeremiah Newell in the chat saying, LOL, yeah, no backflips, Smith Marset and Nuangu to use on special teams. Yeah, brother, Jeremiah, we agree 100%. I think they're both dangerous whenever they get the ball in their hands, and they have some experience, returning punts and kicks.
They bring speed that the Vikings have lacked.
Absolutely, and I'm excited about it. Now we just have to hope they can actually hold on to the ball, which is where KJ Osborne struggled.
That's a big part of it too.
And then Tom Day, in reference to Zylstra, said Thielen too, which, yeah.
He was better than Thielen at Mankato, actually. He was the guy that people have been hearing all these rumblings about, of some kid breaking all of Adam Thielen's records at Mankato. He was a very, very good. I had some buddies that went to Mankato for school, and they're like, yeah, he was the star of this team for many years. So it's another Division II throwing a dart at a guy. But hey, as the Minnesota Vikings know, sometimes that works out.
Yeah, I think the Vikings are making a big mistake, though, because they shouldn't. They should let him come in. They should have let him try out for the team. They should have just done what they did with Adam Thielen, and he would have blocked some punts, and he would have done some fake punts, and he would have ended up turning into a best wide receiver.
US Bank Stadium needs to collapse, and then Thielen needs to start blocking punts at TCF Bank Stadium out in cold weather stadiums again. Full circle, and that'll be happening. That can't happen. That can't happen for another. It's got to be like 5 years down the road though now, because that'll have to come after Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll have to talk about that 3, 4, 5 years down the road from now.
Absolutely. Which, speaking of, that's coming any day. I'm waiting for it. I'm just like, it's the Kellen Mond pick kind of has me discouraged that it'll happen, but like Rodgers has 2 years left on his deal. Cousins has 2 years left on his deal. It just lines up too perfect. But anyway, talking about Twyman, I know he really wants to be compared to, and he wants to, be Aaron Donald. And he just idolizes the way the man plays football. To bring things back to the purple and gold, and this is big praise, or these are big shoot. John Randall was like a defensive tackle that like famously had to put chains around on his shoulders so he could make weight to, even get a tryout and get the time of day from the Vikings. And he was somebody that just really wanted it. I know Twyman had to shave weight off. It's a little different, but he is just one of those smaller guys that you look at and you don't think is going to be good in that one game. And you kind of wonder where he's going to be. I'm just saying, watch out for this kid. I'm really excited about this kid. He might not turn into anything. And if he doesn't, who the heck cares? He was pick 199. Like, most of those guys flame out unless you're Tom Brady. But for my final thoughts of the evening, I'm just going to go ahead and reiterate what Jack said. Incredible draft values all throughout this draft. Really love what we were able to do. The Twyman pick was honestly, I think, the highest value to where he was picked. But I think Darrisaw and Davis and I think we had, 11 picks, and I think 6 or 7 of them are going to play significant roles in this 2021 season. And I can't wait for the preseason to see what Kellen Mond is going to bring, because after week 1, hopefully we don't see the kid until next preseason, because he's not quite ready, but he's not as big of a project as, some of the other guys we have in the building. So really good draft. Really excited to see what the future holds. It's why I love the draft so much, because afterwards you're always just like, oh my God, this is a Super Bowl team. So we'll see what happens with training camp and everything. But Jack, I'll pass it off to you, and you can get us out of here.
Yeah, and I can just kind of circle back to the front of the show. If you want a full breakdown of my thoughts on this, it's a lengthier piece, but it goes pick by pick and talks about all these guys. Have a couple of videos that we discussed with Cam Bynum running down the stairs, back flipping into the lake. It has the video that Jordan just mentioned at the end with Twyman absolutely sobbing like a baby, and then Rick Spielman at the end of it. I almost get the chills when you mentioned that. I could feel it. It was a very cool moment, and even Rick Spielman said it after he hung up the phone. He's like, I'm gonna start crying. And it was a really cool moment. It's just, the NFL draft is one of, Jordan and myself obviously both love this a little bit more than the casual football fan, but it's just fun seeing these guys get their chances to live out their dream. And when you get a guy like that who's just balling, he wants it, and that's exciting. I don't care if he's picked one. Tom Brady says it. He's like, I don't care if you're a first round pick. I was picked 199. Look where I'm. It doesn't matter where you're taken. It matters. All that matters is where you finish. And I think there's a lot of players in this draft class that felt, for the Vikings in particular, that felt that they shouldn't have fallen as far as it did. I know Smith Marset wasn't too happy to be a 5th round pick, and I think that's rightfully so. I don't think he should have been a 5th round pick either. I don't necessarily think Wyatt Davis should have been a 3rd round pick. And I just think this circles back to the article that I also talked about that I wrote after the second day of the draft. The Vikings did a fantastic job at finding value at positions of need. They kind of combined the two. It wasn't just, hey, we need an offensive tackle, let's force Darrisaw here at 14. They traded back. They watched the Raiders. I don't want to say Alex Leatherwood is a bad tackle prospect. That's not what I'm saying when I say this. But they watched the Raiders do in typical Raider fashion, take a guy and it's like, what are you doing? I saw a funny tweet, and I'm starting to ramble here, but I'll finish shortly. I saw a funny tweet. It essentially said, if you just switch the Morig pick that the Raiders had in the 2nd round with Leatherwood, the draft makes more sense, because they went and got the best safety in the draft class, and then they take Leatherwood and flip-flop it. It's like, hey, that might make a little bit more sense. But the Raiders stay doing Raiders things, but the Vikings stay doing Vikings things, finding value. Rick Spielman is a great GM, and I don't think his job should be in jeopardy. He's finding talent for this team, and they just need to go out and prove it. What's up?
Let me really quickly. I have to say, because I didn't say this.
No, you're good.
Rick Spielman, Slick Rick, the king of 7th round picks. 0 7th round picks in this draft. I was shocked. There was a part of me that was proud that he didn't trade back 1,000 times and pick 19 guys that are going to be working at the UPS store in a couple of months. But we didn't even talk about it. 0, no 7th round picks. It's just incredible. It is an incredible draft. I'm sorry. I had to just interject there with that.
Barring the fact that Rick Spielman didn't get to enjoy any 7th round picks, it was a fantastic draft for this front office. And I think if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan right now, you have to be feeling pretty good going into the season. I just saw, I think it was Bleacher Report came out and said this team is ranked 23rd in their power rankings, which I mean, I'm not going to sit here and bash the reporters at Bleacher Report because the Vikings they didn't prove last year that they had the depth to make a run. They struggled, and that was probably about where they finished last year. So if they want to say that the Vikings are in the 20s, and I think normally we joke about odd years being good years for the Vikings. You go back and you look at those odd years and tell me where the Vikings were in the power rankings the year before. They're never actually in the top 10, maybe they are top 15-ish in that spot. But I feel like Vikings fans always kind of feel like they're just not where they necessarily deserve. And I think 2021, that could be the case again. I think this is going to be a very good football team in 2021. You get the returning vets on defense. You get Michael Pierce. You shore up that defensive line, the interior with Dalvin Tomlinson. You have an absolute stud of a playmaker in Patrick Peterson, who I mean, we just got so in depth and talked about 11 draft picks. I forgot he was even on the Vikings roster. So there's a lot of stuff to be excited for heading into the 2021 season. This draft was almost just a cherry on the top. It shored up the offensive line, got some playmakers, got Andre Patterson some tools as well. So overall, I gave the draft an A- because I did feel like a couple of the picks were a little bit of a reach. I didn't want to be too much of a say that, hey, this was the absolute perfect draft and the Vikings are guaranteed to win the Super Bowl just because of this draft. But overall, it was a great draft. Vikings fans should be excited. It's going to be a fun year in 2021.